So today we are going to get started with GitOps, understanding what exactly it is, how exactly it is different from like general way of like building and deploying applications, and what exactly is the benefit of it. Okay, and eventually we are going to see how exactly we can implement this. Okay, now first thing like we should be knowing about GitOps is like what exactly is the definition. So there are multiple definition. Okay, but general definition that you should be knowing is like GitOps is a methodology or a process to automate infrastructure and application deployment using Git as a single source of truth. Okay, so out of that first keyword that we understand, it is going to automate deployment, right? And deployment of what? It is going to automate different deployment of infra as well as application. Okay, where I mentioned infra, that means the kind of like whole environment like EKS cluster where we are going to deploy. It can also create like virtual machines, whatever is needed. So all those things will be infra. Okay, and then we'll be having the application, actual application which we want to build and deploy. Okay, so GitOps is going to be basically a way to automate this whole process in a proper way. Okay, you might be thinking, okay, other tools are also automating, but how it's different? So let us understand more. Second thing that I mentioned in GitOps definition is that GitOps, as I mentioned, it's going to do everything using Git as a single source of truth. Okay, Git as a single source of truth. Now, when GitOps was basically getting started, the first definition was given was like Git should be used as a Git single source of truth. What is single source of truth? When we say Git as a single source of truth, what exactly does it mean? Okay, so here basically it says that whatever configuration you are having of your infrastructure, like configuration in the sense, you can take example, let's say I want to create infrastructure of EKS. I want to set up EKS. So all the detailed configuration of EKS, like how many worker nodes should be there, what will be the size of worker node, what will be the storage of worker node, and all the detailed information or the configuration of that EKS cluster will be stored into, or stored, or you can say stored or written in a file, and it will be stored on a Git repo. Okay, similarly, the configuration of our application that we want to deploy, for example, like how many pods we want for the application, and what will be the Docker registry from where it will be coming, what kind of service we want to use, all this information will be written again in a file and stored inside Git repo. Okay, so that's what we mean by when we say Git as a single source of truth. Okay, plus third thing, see, in here you can clearly see this thing that we have mentioned, it's nothing but IAC, infrastructure as code. When we write all the detailed configuration of whatever we are going to work with in a separate file, store it on GitHub or any other kind of Git repository, and then utilize it to create that infra or application, that is the IAC. Okay, so main definition, again I'm repeating, GitOps is a methodology or a process which is going to automate the infrastructure and application deployment using Git as a single source of truth. Okay, now still we are still not understanding like how exactly it's different. So that will be able to understand about the by understanding the principles of GitOps. Okay, so there are basically 4 principles that we are going to understand about GitOps. First principle that we are having is like this one only: Git as a single source of truth. Okay, Git as a single source of truth, that is the first principle of GitOps, where you can see clearly as I mentioned, we are going to write everything inside a specific file, store it on GitHub or any other Git repository, and from there itself we are going to deploy. Okay, second principle that you should be knowing, let's say second principle. So second principle, we are having declarative desired state. Okay, now I mentioned first thing that we have to do is like store the configuration of whatever infrastructure we are going to create inside the Git repository or the application itself, right? What exactly do we mean by declarative desired state? So it is basically a way of writing those configuration. Okay, see, so there are two kind of approach that you can use to write configuration. First is declarative, second is imperative. So in imperative, basically what we do when we are going to create those configuration file, in that we are going to write the step by exact steps also. Okay, this step you need to follow in order to create the EKS cluster. But when we use declarative approach, there we just have to write the final state. Final state is something like that, at the I want at the end that there should be 3 worker node in my Kubernetes cluster, there will be, each one should be having 30 GB of storage. Okay, so these are like the final stage I'm writing. This is my desired state. Okay, and that is the declarative approach. While imperative, in imperative approach, basically we have to mention like exact process which needs to be followed for the creation of worker node and adding storage and all those things. Okay, so second principle that GitOps follows is the declarative desired state, in which we have to write the configuration files which is our desired state at the end. Okay, third principle that GitOps follows is basically like automated reconciliation. What exactly does it mean? So we want that first step is done. Let's say this is my Git repository. Okay, let's say we have two Git repository. In one Git repository, I have added infra configuration, means configuration of EKS cluster. In second, I have added the second repository, I have added the configuration of application. What kind of configuration we can add for the application is the deployment YAML files, YAML manifest files, like the deployment file, then the service file, then other files that we need to create. Okay, so when we mention automated reconciliation, that means ki uh, as soon as any changes we add here, for example, let's say my EKS cluster is created, it is running fine, but after some time in my repository I mentioned that now instead of 3 worker node I want 4 worker node. Okay, so as soon as I commit those changes here, immediately it should be reflecting, or it should be deployed on the cluster, on the EKS cluster. So previously when we were having 3 worker node, immediately now it should be 4 worker node, because we have just updated the same thing inside the Git repository where we have the configuration files. Okay, similarly, let's say in my application configuration files, we have mentioned that I want to have two pods for the application, but after some time I updated it to 3. So immediately it should be reflecting in the deployed application. That means inside our Kubernetes cluster, immediately we should be having 3 pods available. Okay, so this is like automatic reconciliation. Immediately as soon as we update the configuration file, those changes are immediately deployed on the cluster. Okay, that is the third principle. Now fourth principle. So fourth principle basically we have, which is known as pull based deployment. What exactly does it mean by pull based deployment? So basically, uh, see, like these are the repositories, right? So there will be third application which is responsible for performing the deployment. Okay, let's say let's call it as Argo CD. There is an application known as Argo CD. So what it does, it's going to continuously monitor our repositories, and as soon as it sees that there are some new changes in the repository, immediately those changes will be pulled, and those changes will be deployed inside our EKS cluster. So it's pulling the changes immediately from repository and deploying those changes inside EKS cluster. So that is pull based deployment. Okay, now let us understand exactly how exactly it's going to work, how exactly GitOps works. Okay, so for that I have created one diagram and I'm going to explain in detail how exactly it works. Okay, before that let us compare how GitOps is different from the traditional approach. Okay, for example, in traditional approach, what we do, we use CI/CD tools like Jenkins for CI and CD. Okay, where what are the stages we mentioned? First we have the CI part. In CI part, what we have, we build the application, we run different security check, right? We build Docker image, right? Then next stage will be for deploying the application to Kubernetes. For that, what we have to do first, we have to add the Kubernetes URL in our Jenkins. Then we have to add the credentials, right? And then then only we are able to deploy the application. Correct? That is the traditional approach. Okay. While in GitOps, this process will be same. CI process will be same, where we are going to build the application, run security checks, run build Docker image. But here, instead of adding Kubernetes credential or URL, we don't have to do that. Simply, we just need to make sure that the configuration files, the YAML manifest files for the application, they are correctly updated and stored in our Git repository. And from here, as soon as we update any kind of changes, those changes will be fetched by Argo CD immediately and it will be deployed to EKS cluster. Here benefit you can see ki we don't have to worry about this like storing credentials in Jenkins itself. We don't have to worry about if my from Jenkins we are able to connect to Kubernetes cluster or not. We don't have to worry about any of those things. We just need to worry about one thing, which is have we updated correct files in the Git repository or not. Okay, so it is like very beneficial from security point of view also, because here not at all we are storing any kind of Kubernetes related credentials. Okay, now let us understand the complete workflow, how exactly it's going to work. Okay, now first scenario, there will be total 3 repositories. Okay, why 3 repository? First repo is going to be for infrastructure, using which we are going to create the EKS cluster. I'm going to implement is this whole process. I'll show you also in detail, do not worry. Second repo which we are going to have is the actual application source code. Okay, third repo which we are going to have is the configuration files which we are going to use to deploy the application. In our case, it's going to be YAML manifest files. Okay, now let us understand from scratch. So first step that we are going to do, using the repository that we have which has the Terraform files for creating the EKS cluster, using Jenkins we can immediately create the EKS cluster. In this scenario, I'm not going to use Jenkins, I'm going to directly create it. This will be for later one. Okay, so first step is that we need to create the infrastructure. That is, we need to create EKS cluster. Okay, second step, once we have created the EKS cluster, we need to set up Argo CD. Now, previously when I was mentioning that we don't need to worry about setting credentials for Kubernetes. So why we don't need to do that? Because as I mentioned, ki Argo CD is the tool using which we can perform the deployment, and by default it will be running inside the Kubernetes cluster itself as an application. Okay, so if Argo CD is already running inside the Kubernetes cluster, that means it is already connected to Kubernetes cluster, right? That means we don't need to worry about we don't need to worry about separately connecting Kubernetes Argo CD tool to Kubernetes cluster. Why? Because it is already inside the cluster created. Okay, so let's say we have created the EKS cluster, we have set up Argo CD also. Next step is that we need to make sure that we have correct repository for application source code with application source code. Okay, so once we have application source code, then what we can do, we can write the pipeline stages. This will be for CI. In CI stages, we are going to have a few things. That is, first we are going to compile the application, we are going to run test cases, we are going to run SonarQube analysis, we are going to perform security checking, security vulnerabilities checking on our application source code. Then we are going to build the application, generate the artifact, and publish it to Sonatype Nexus. Then we are going to build Docker image and scan the Docker image. Now, if we have Docker image built, we are going to have different tag. For example, let's say I'm basically upgrading the application, so Docker tag will be version 1. Okay, now once we have created Docker image, let's say it is of version 1, next step would be to update this Docker image details inside our YAML manifest files. That also we can directly do using Jenkins. Using sed command we can do. It is going to be useful for substituting something inside a specific YAML manifest files. Okay, so then after Docker image is created, next step is to update that Docker image details in our YAML manifest files inside the CD source code repo, the repo which contains the configuration files for the application to be deployed, the YAML manifest files. So once we have updated that using Jenkins, automatically Argo CD is going to fetch those details in less than a second. And that will be done because webhook will be configured. Now this webhook part, actually nobody, I did not saw anyone using this on YouTube also. I'm not sure like why. Because if you configure webhook in few seconds, like almost less than a second also, Argo CD is going to fetch those details and deploy it inside Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so once Argo CD fetch those details, it's going to deploy those details inside Kubernetes cluster, and then pods and services of the application will be created. Okay, so this is what we are going to implement now. Okay, and as I say, we are going to do it from scratch so that everything we can understand. So first thing that we are going to do is create a EKS cluster, and I can first for that we need to create a server from where we need to run the commands. I can run server here. I can mention server Ubuntu, and then this one. So we are going to take a T2 medium machine. We are going to create a T2 medium machine, and for that we are going to select key. In case you are doing this for the first time, you need to click on create new key pair, provide any name, make sure it's RSA, and make sure it's PEM file, and you can click on create new key pair. Once new key pair is created, it will be downloaded on your machine as well. Now what we can do, we can go ahead and select the security group, and let me show you the ports that I have opened on my security group so that you can understand which ports need to be opened. Okay, if I go here and go to security group, and this is the security group that I'm using, and these are the general ports that I keep open on my machine because most of the tasks that I do are done within these ports only. Okay, so these ports will be opened. After that, once we have selected security group, we can provide storage, so I can go with 20. Okay, and click on launch instance. Now this instance is created, so we can connect to this instance. Okay, click on public IP address, get the IP address, go to mobile xterm. Okay, and let me do this again. Okay, and here click on session, click on SSH, paste the IP address that you have copied, and provide the username. In case of Ubuntu, it's going to be Ubuntu only in small letters. Then advanced SSH, click on use private key, and we have to browse to location where we have kept our SSH private key. Okay, and we can select that and click on open and click on OK. Okay, now let me just rename this. I will just rename it to server. Click on OK, and let us connect to it again. Okay, now once we have connected to our Ubuntu machine, first command that you should always run is going to be sudo apt update. Okay, and click enter. Now it's going to update the default repository within Linux that contains different packages that we are going to use. For example, let's say I want to download Java. Okay, so if I run command to install Java without running sudo apt update, it may give error. It may say that package not found. So in order to avoid those kind of issues, make sure to always run first command sudo apt update whenever you create a machine. So we have created machine. Now in order to create EKS cluster from here, we need to make sure that we are connected to our AWS account. How do we do that? So for that, we are going to use a CLI, which is AWS CLI. Okay, CLI is what? Just command line interface, which is going to help us communicate with AWS. Okay, so for that, what we are going to do, we are going to install AWS CLI here, and you can get the commands anywhere. Okay, I have just stored it on here. You will receive this in documentation. Okay, I can paste this, and in this command, this set of command, it's going to install AWS CLI for us so that we will be able to communicate from this virtual machine to our AWS account, because eventually we have to create the EKS cluster. Okay, once AWS CLI is installed, you need to run the command AWS configure, which is going to which is going to give you an option to provide credentials. What kind of credentials? So for that, if I go back to here, AWS portal, here you see this option profile. Here you can click on security credentials. Okay, so this method that I'm showing, it's not recommended in companies, but for practice purpose, you can use it. Okay, here you'll be able to find access keys section. Here you have to just create access key, check this box option, and click on create access key. Once you create, it will give you an option to download that access keys in CSV format or Excel format. Okay, you have created, right? Once we have done that, see, in companies what they do, they create separate user in IAM, and then they are going to provide it permission to create EKS cluster. Okay, but here I'm going to create like root, this is like kind of root credentials, you can say, this one access keys. Okay, so once we have that, you can see this is the access keys I have on my machine. Okay, I have downloaded it. After that, we have to go back here on the virtual machine. Here we have to provide AWS access key that we will be able to get from the file we have downloaded. Okay, in case you are doing this for the first time, you can again click here, click on create access key, and these kind of credentials you'll be able to get, and you can click on download CSV file to get it. Okay, so I'll just copy this and I will paste it here, the access key ID. Then it's asking secret access key, that also you can get from the file that you have downloaded. I'll copy this, paste it here. Okay, next we have to provide region name. So region name, we have to make sure that we are providing the region which is nearest to us, which is ap-south-1. Click enter. And then output format, just click, let it be empty, click enter. Now we are connected to our AWS account, and now we'll be able to create EKS cluster. So for creating EKS cluster, what we have to do, we have to clone the repository here. Okay, guys, I hope the screen is visible. Fine. Okay, great. Okay, so now I have created this. This is my GitHub account. You can just go here. You will find all the repository. Three repository that we'll be using for this demo. First, EKS cluster, EKS Terraform. This will be the repository for creating EKS cluster, and these two repositories for CI and CD separate. I'll explain in a bit. First, let us clone this EKS Terraform repository. Okay. One more thing you need to remember, when you're using this repository, few things you have to change, because as of now it's configured for my requirement, right? So first thing that you have to change, go to variables and make sure here in default is the private key name of your account. Whichever private key you are using, make sure to change that. Second thing that you have to make sure, go to main.tf, and here in availability zones, make sure to put the availability zone as per your own requirement. I have put as the Mumbai location. Okay, once you have done these things, then you are good to go. And now we can clone this repository on our Ubuntu machine. So I can copy this. I can run the command git clone. Yes, this is going to clone the repository. Now, once we have cloned, we can go inside the EKS repository. Okay, and we have these files here. Next step is to make, since we are going to run Terraform command, so we need to make sure that Terraform is present on this virtual machine. So we can check that by running command Terraform, and we can see here Terraform is not present, but we get the command to install. And generally we install packages using apt package manager, but here we have snap. So when you install packages using snap, most of the packages are built in a different way. So if I just run this command, we'll be getting error. You can see error, right? So in order to fix it, you just need to make sure you need to add classic here. Okay, and then Terraform will be installed. So once Terraform is installed on our machine, then we can go ahead and run the Terraform commands to create the EKS cluster. Okay, it's taking few minutes. Okay, meanwhile what we can do, if I show you here, so since we'll be needing Jenkins also, Jenkins, Nexus and SonarQube, so let us do one thing, let us create those things as well. So I can go back to EC2 machine. Here I'm going to create instance, and this time I need to create 3 instances. Okay, one for Jenkins, one for SonarQube, one for Nexus. Configuration is going to be same. Make sure that you are in current exact location. For me, it's going to be Mumbai. And 3 machines we have to create. Ubuntu. And keep here we can select. And machine, we are going to use T2 medium, which is like a kind of like more than enough size. Okay. After that, security group, we can select the one that I showed you, that is more than enough. Storage, for each one of them, I'm giving 25. Okay, and click on launch instance. Now these machines are created. Let us name them so that we don't forget. Okay. First machine we are going to call as Jenkins. Second machine we are going to call as SonarQube. Third machine we are going to call as Nexus. Okay. Now let us configure Jenkins now. So first I'll get the public IP address, go back. Okay, and what I do, I can duplicate this, then click on rename and rename this to Jenkins. Now the thing is that this all these machines that I'm creating, they are using the same private key. That means I just have to change same private key plus their Ubuntu. That means username is also going to be same. So I can just change the remote host, means that means the public IP address of the machine. That is enough. Customize color also you can do if needed. I can just go with red for Jenkins, and we can connect to Jenkins. Okay. As I told you, first command that we are supposed to run, sudo apt update. Okay, and let's wait for this. Now, when you set up Jenkins, the prerequisite for Jenkins is that there should be a Java installed on whichever machine you are going to set up Jenkins. Okay, so first thing that we have to do with respect to Jenkins is make sure that Java is present. Okay, Yeah. So now I'll run the command as Java, and we can see Java is not present, but we get the commands. So I can install JDK 17. And if you see there, it says headless. Headless means that this Java version is not having any kind of user interface, no UI. Okay. I can click enter and it's going to install Java on this machine. Meanwhile, we can check the status here. Okay. So it's still getting installed. It will take 1 more minute. Okay. And okay. So on Jenkins, we have installed Java. So now we can run the command to install Jenkins. For that, you just have to type on Google install Jenkins on Ubuntu. And the first link that comes, go there, click on the Linux flavor that you are using. I'm using Ubuntu. Click on that and make sure to install LTS version because it is like long-term support and it is kind of stable. So make sure to go with it. So I'll copy this command and simply run it on the Jenkins machine. And it's going to install Jenkins on our virtual machine. Okay. And yeah, it's still going on. Okay. So this is happening. Meanwhile, we can connect to our second machine for 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏 also. And this is the machine. I can get the public IP address, go back to MobaXterm, click on this, create duplicate session, rename. We can name it to 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏. You can change the color to blue if you want. And then I can change the IP address for 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏. Click on OK. And now 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is also connected. Okay. So here also first command that we are going to run sudo apt update. Meanwhile, we can come here. Okay, it's taking a little bit of time. Okay, so Jenkins is installed, but when Jenkins is installed, directly you should not be accessing it. Before that, one more thing we should be doing, you should go on the same page, scroll down, you'll be able to find this command sudo systemctl enable Jenkins. Why you need to run this? Because we want that you can enable Jenkins service to start at boot with the command. That means if our virtual machine is getting rebooted, so we need to make sure that as soon as it is rebooted, Jenkins service should be running. So for that purpose, make sure to run this command. I can copy that and run it on Jenkins. Okay, side by side. On 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 machine also we have run the sudo apt update command. Okay. Okay. Now, so Jenkins is installed and by default Jenkins run on port 8080. So we can access it by here, get the IP address of Jenkins virtual machine, paste it on browser, port is 8080. Click enter and you can see that it is installed. Okay, but we have to configure it now. So you can see it requires an administrator password which is present on this location. This is the file. Initial admin password is the file which contains the password. So we are going to copy this path. We are going to go back to Jenkins virtual machine, clear screen, and I can use cat command to get the credential. But the thing is it's going to give us error. You can see permission denied. Why it's giving error? Because var directory requires elevated permission. So what we can do, before cat we can simply add sudo and get the credentials. So I can copy this credential, go back to Jenkins and paste it here and click on continue. Okay. Now it says customize Jenkins. So we have two options, install suggested plugins and select plugins to install. We are going to go with first option because Jenkins knows which plugins to be installed, which are necessary plugins. So I can click on here, and depending on your network speed and like machine size, it may take some time. Okay. Meanwhile, we can go back here and okay. So Terraform is installed now, right? So first command we are going to run is Terraform init, which is going to initialize and it is going to figure out on what cloud provider we want to create the resource. In our case, AWS, and we want to create EKS cluster on that. So all those details will be initialized and will be added here. After that, we can check how many resources are going to be created, how many things are going to be created. For that, we can run Terraform plan. It is going to show us what exact resources are going to be created. Here we can see that it is planning to add 17 new resources, that is creating 17 new resources. And you can see here all the details will be present, what exactly is going to be created. Okay. Now, so to create these resources, we can run the command terraform apply. If I run this terraform apply, there will be a prompt coming. If I click enter, you'll be able to see Let's wait for this. You can see here it is asking enter a value. That means if I put yes, then it's going to go ahead. But sometimes it happens that we have to run Terraform commands through Jenkins or any other CI/CD tool. In that case, we won't be able to provide the confirmation during the runtime. So in that case, we can simply add hyphen auto dash approve. That means ki already permission is having, and it can go ahead to create the cluster. So click enter, and now it's going to start to create the cluster, and this will take quite some time, maybe 5 minutes or 6 minutes it's going to take. Okay, now coming back to Jenkins is fine. Now we can Jenkins is also getting set up here, right? Now we can set up our SonarQube. So I'm going to set up SonarQube using a Docker. I'm going to create a Docker container for SonarQube, which is the easiest way. So first we need to make sure that we have Docker present on this machine. For that, I can go on browser and search install Docker on Ubuntu. First link that comes, we can go here, scroll down, I will be able to find the command install using apt. So first, if I go back here, if I run here Docker, you can see that we get the command to install Docker, but the problem is that the version is not latest. And in case of our CI/CD pipeline, we need the latest version because in older version there are certain issues. For that reason, I'm adding the repository first from here. So I'll copy this to add the repository, add it here. Okay, and once repository is added, we can get the second command, which is the final, to install Docker along with other dependent resources. I can run that command also. Okay, and now it's going to install Docker on our machine. Now in case of Docker, we need to understand one thing, which is basically we need to understand this, that when we set up Docker, by default only root user has the permission to run Docker commands, and in order to make sure that we are also having the permission to run Docker commands, we have to add our current user to Docker group, so that the permissions that is available inside Docker group can be given to our current user also. Then only current user will be able to run Docker commands. Okay, so here on SonarQube, Docker is installed. I can run this docker hyphen version. We can see Docker is installed, and you can see latest version is 27. But if I try to run this command docker pull hello-world, it's giving permission denied because by default only root user has permission. So two options we have as of now. First thing, we can use sudo before our docker command to run, or we can add we can add this user, Ubuntu user, to Docker group. That we can do how? We can do that by running the command sudo user mod -a capital G. This means that we are appending another group to our Ubuntu user. Okay, then the group name, which is Docker, to which we want to add, and the current user. For that, I can write $user, or directly you can write Ubuntu also, both are same. Once we have done that, still for these changes to be applied, either we need to restart the machine, or we can run one command, new group Docker. This will make sure that these changes are applied. For example, if I again run this command, we should not be getting error. You can see it is able to pull the Docker image now. Okay, so we have to install a Docker. We have to create Docker container for SonarQube. For that, we can run the command docker run -d. -d means running in detached mode, running in background. Okay, then we have to provide information about port. Two ports we have to mention here: container port and host port. First port is going to be host port. What is host port? So host port is the port on this machine wherever you are running the command. So first port will be on this machine. That means we need this is the port on which we are going to access the SonarQube container. Second port is going to be again 9000, which is going to be the port on the container that is going to be created. Okay, now one thing you need to remember, that this port can change. Whatever you want, you can put it, but this port cannot change because it is default for the specific container. Okay, then Docker image we have to provide. We can write SonarQube :ls -community. It is a free version of SonarQube which you can set up. Click enter, and it's going to download the Docker image, and it's going to create a container for it. One thing that I can do now is create we can now set up for Nexus. I can go to Nexus, get the public IP address, go back MobaXterm, create another duplicate session, rename this. I'm going to rename this to Nexus, and we just have to change the IP address, and color also you want, you can change it. Okay, and we can connect to Nexus also. And as you remember, first command that I said, sudo apt update. Okay, so now you can see here SonarQube setup. We can confirm that by running the command docker ps, which is going to show us which containers are running. So as of now, one second, let me, yeah. As of now, you can see this container is running with the container ID this. And we have set up the IP address for our host is 9000. That means our SonarQube server will be accessible on machine IP address, the and colon, if I go back here, colon 9000. So SonarQube is running here. Okay, fine. And Jenkins is also created, so we can set up username and password. I can provide username, then password, then full name, then email address. In the email address, you can put anything. It does not matter as of now. Click on save and continue. So now Jenkins is set up, and you can see here SonarQube is also set up. Okay. And yeah, so when you set up SonarQube, by default, it will come to this page asking for a username and password. So for the first time, username and password will be admin by default. Click on add that and click on login. Next, you have to change the password. So I can provide some other password, and I can do this. Okay. So now SonarQube setup, Jenkins setup. Next, we have to set up Nexus. For Nexus also, I'm going to set up like Docker container. So I can get the IP command to add Docker repository. I can go back to Nexus, and first command I can run to add the repository. Where is it? Sorry. Add it here. Run this, and it's going to set up Nexus on our machine using Docker container. Okay. Next thing, we have to run a final command to install Docker, which we'll be able to get on the official page itself. And I can do this. Okay. Again, as I mentioned, by default, only root user has permission. So if I want to run commands, I need to make sure that current user, which is in our case Ubuntu, is added to Docker group. Okay. So let's wait for this. Okay. So this is done. And second, we can check once docker hyphen version. So we have Docker. Now I can run sudo user mod -a capital G, then Docker group, then Ubuntu user. Okay. Now Ubuntu user has permission, but for these changes to reflect immediately, we can run the command new group Docker. Okay. And now we need to run the command to create container of Nexus. So for that, again, we are going to run the command docker run -d -p. By default, we are going to set up the host port on the port open that will be open on this virtual machine 8081, and container port 8081. Container port is like by default 8081, so we don't have to change that. Next, we have to find Docker image. So if you are new, you can simply go on browser, you can search Sona type Nexus Docker image, and it will take you to this page, official Docker repository, and you can copy this. This is the Docker Hub Nexus image. Okay, I can paste here, click enter, and now it's going to pull that image and create the container out of it. Okay. One more thing you need to understand very clearly when you set up Nexus is that when the container is created, still it takes 4 to 5 minutes to completely come up in running state. So if you create the container immediately, and immediately if you try to access on browser, it may not be able to be visible immediately. Okay. As of now, you can see it's created. Okay. And if I try to access this on browser, I can get the IP address of the machine, go on browser and paste here, and port we have set up, which was 8081. Click enter, and you can see it's not yet accessible. So do not worry, because as I say, Nexus takes some time. Okay, so yeah, let it be. Coming back to Jenkins, 1 second. Okay, here also one more thing, you can see our EKS cluster is set up. That means ki now we can connect to it, and now we can set up Argo CD. Okay, so now uh, first we need to make sure that we have kubectl here. As of now it's not present, so we can install it using snap package, and make sure to add classic. And again, this may take some time. Okay, so let it be, it's getting done. Meanwhile, see, as of now we have created the EKS cluster, right? But for connecting or communicating with any kind of Kubernetes cluster, as you know, we have to make sure that we should be having the kubeconfig file. Kubeconfig file is a kind of file. It's basically a configuration file that contains detailed information about the cluster. Plus, it is also being used as a for authentication. So we need to make sure that we have kubeconfig file present on this machine. So for that, what we have to do, I'll create another duplicate session for server. And for that, we have to run this command, AWS EKS region update kubeconfig, which is going to create the kubeconfig file for our DevOps Shack cluster. So I will run this command using AWS, and it's going to set up the kubeconfig file. Once I run this, you can see it has successfully run, and it has created the kubeconfig file on this location. So I'll close this. Okay, and let's wait for this to install kubectl. Meanwhile, we can check for Nexus. Yeah, you can see now it's running. So first thing that we have to do is we have to log into Nexus. So for that, we can click on sign in, and here it says username is admin. Okay, password is present on this location. Now, since we have created Nexus server using Docker container, so we have to go inside the Docker container to find this file admin password. Okay, so how we can do that? First, we have to run the command docker ps to see container is running, right? And here make sure you have this container ID. Then you have to run the command docker exec, means execute my hyphen it. Hyphen it means we want to open a interactive terminal so that we can interact with the container. Then the container ID that we have, which is this one. So I will copy that. Then we will need to mention what kind of terminal we want. So I want to interact with bash terminal or sh terminal. So for that, I need to call it by -bin/bash. Click enter. And you can see the terminal has been changed from Ubuntu to bash 4.4. ls, if I run, you can see this is the, now we are inside the Nexus container. So now you have to go inside Sona type work. Here we have one folder Nexus, so we will go inside that as well. Run ls, and here you can see first file is admin.password. So this is the file that contains the initial admin password. So I can run cat and get the password. So now I have the password as well. So I can copy, make sure to copy till 1. Do not copy the bash. Let me copy again. And we can go back to Nexus, provide the credential here, click on sign in, click on next. And now we have to set up new password. So I can set up new password, click on next. And here, see, some of you might know that Nexus is also being used as a private Docker registry in companies. Either they are going to use some cloud Docker registry, or they are going to set up their own private Docker registry inside Nexus. That means we can store Docker images inside Nexus. So here you see this option, configure anonymous access. So if we enable anonymous access, then anyone who has the URL of our specific artifact inside Nexus, they can download it. So it is up to requirement if you want to enable it, if you don't want to enable it. Okay, so I can simply enable for now. Click on next and click on finish. Now we have set up Nexus, we have set up SonarQube, and we have set up Jenkins also. Okay, one more thing that we have to do before we get started with Jenkins, since we are going to run Docker commands inside Jenkins as well. Okay, see, once you have done with the Nexus, you can exit out of the container by running the exit command. Okay, coming back to Jenkins. So we need to make sure that we are able to run Docker commands on Jenkins as well, and inside the Jenkins server. So for first of all, we need to install Docker on Jenkins as well. I'll run the command, and I will run the command to install Jenkins as well. One more thing we need to understand, initially, as of now in SonarCube and Nexus, we ran the command to add Ubuntu user to Docker group. But in case of Jenkins, since we are going to run Docker commands from here, right? So we need to make sure ki with whichever user Jenkins is executing commands, that user is also having Docker permission. So how we can do that? So I know that when we run any like any pipeline with Jenkins, it is running with a user named Jenkins. That means I need to give permission to Jenkins user. How we can do that? We can run sudo user mod -a capital G, then the group to which we want to add, and I want to add user Jenkins. Click enter. Now for these changes to take effect, immediately we need to go here, go on browser, type / then restart. This is going to restart. 1 second. Uh, TYA. Okay. So here we need to click on yes, and this is going to install restart Jenkins server. Now as soon as Jenkins server is restarted, then Jenkins will be having permission to execute Docker commands. Okay. That means we have set up all the things. Now what else we need to set up? We can go back here. Okay. So here kubectl is installed, and now if I run the command kubectl get nodes. Sorry about that spelling mistake. So here you can see our cluster is running and we have the version 1.31, which is latest, I guess. And as of now, we are having 3 worker node. Okay. Now we need to set up Argo CD inside this. So for that, what we have to do, we can use, first of all, we need to create a namespace named Argo CD, because we want that our, if I show you, we want that the Argo CD inside Kubernetes cluster should be running in a separate, its own namespace. So I'm going to create namespace kubectl create namespace, name is going to be Argo CD. Okay. So once we have created, next thing we have to do, we have to apply manifest files of Argo CD that we'll be able to get from this like on GitHub, and you can utilize this URL. And I'm using this stable version. Okay. So I can run this command to install. Now it's going to create all the resources for Argo CD, whichever is required. All the pods, services, service account, config map, whatever is needed, it's going to create it. Okay. You can see there are tons of resources it has created. Okay. Now what I can do, I can run the command kubectl get all -n, then name of the namespace, which is Argo CD in our case. And you can see here there are tons of resources created. Some of them are in uh, running, like initiating state. It will take some time for all of them to come into running state. Okay. You can see one by one everything is getting or coming into running state. This will take few minutes, but yeah, let's wait for this. Okay. So as of now, we can see here everything is running, right? You can see all the pods, services, deployment, replica set, stateful also. Okay. Now we need to access Argo CD. So everywhere what I have seen, like people try to give commands like kubectl export command. In my opinion, that is not the best case, because in case of Kubernetes, whenever we deploy application, the best way to access that application is either using load balancer or the ingress, right? So what we can do, as of now, this is the main server. This is the main Argo CD server. Okay. And as of now, you can see it is of service type cluster IP. So what if I can convert this cluster IP to load balancer? Then here we'll be getting our own URL to access Argo CD, right? And that's what we can do. Correct. So for that, what we are going to do now, we are going to run specific command. First, we are going to run kubectl get svc, and we want to get all the service details in the namespace Argo CD. So I can run namespace Argo CD. Okay. And we are having these many services, out of which this is the main service using which you can access. How do I know? Because here you can see port 80 and 443. What are these ports for? 80 is for HTTP and 443 is for HTTPS. Okay. So now I can edit this service and convert it into load balancer, which is the easiest way. So I can run the command kubectl edit svc -n, then namespace is Argo CD. Okay. And here we need to provide the service name also, which is in our case this one. Okay, and click enter. Now this thing that you are seeing, this is the service file of the newly created Argo CD. And here you can see I can edit this and I can change this cluster IP to load balancer. Remember this is the correct way to set it up. Make sure that load balancer spelling is correct, because if not, then you will face issues. L and B should be capital, and save this. Okay, we have saved this, and I can again run the command git svc in Argo CD cluster, and now you can see it has generated a new URL using which we'll be able to access Argo CD on browser. Remember, this is the correct way. Most of you who are already knowing Kubernetes know the correct way to access anything externally is either using load balancer or a ingress, right? Now, immediately we have created, so it may take few minutes to completely come in proper state, and then only it will be accessible. So I can go here. I can, sorry, let me get the URL correctly. And I can copy this URL. I can paste it in browser. Okay, and please wait, because do not worry, it will take some time to completely come in running state. Okay, now let's wait for this. Okay, now this page comes, you can see it is not in HTTPS, it's like not secure version. So here this will come, your connection is not private, you need to click on advanced. See, as of now, we have not attached the SSL certificate. Okay. Anyway, I'll be showing like how to connect to SSL certificates in my course actually. Okay. Yeah. So here you can click on proceed to this, and this is going to take you to this location where you can see this is the Argo CD page. So by default, username is admin, and we have to get the password. So how do we get the password? So basically, I'll show you if I run one command here, kubectl get secrets -n Argo CD. Okay, you can see there are so many secrets present, out of which this is the secret which is containing the password for the Argo CD. So how do we get it? Because by default, what happens? These kind of secrets inside Kubernetes, they are created in like a encrypted format. So encrypted using base 64. So we have to when we are going to decrypt them, we have to make sure that we are decrypting them using base 64. So for that, we can use one simple command, which is going to be like this, kubectl get secret. First, we are going to get this secret. Then we are going to output the secret inside JSON format, and what data we are looking for, the password. And that also in base 64, we have to decrypt. So I can run this command, and it's going to give us initial password. So this is the initial password. Make sure to copy before Ubuntu. Once we have that, we can go back to Argo CD. We can paste it here, click on sign in, and now you are connected. First thing that you should be doing, click on user info, click on update password. Current password you can paste, and we can change the new password. Okay, so that it's easier for you to access other time. We can save password. Sorry, let me. Click on this. New password has been updated. You can just log out one time, and you can just verify that your password is working. And here we can add the password. Okay. So now we are connected. We have created our Argo CD cluster. Okay. Next thing, what we are going to do, we are going to create the CI pipeline using which we are going to build the Docker image and push it to Docker Hub repository. So here I'll log in back to Jenkins. Sorry, it's getting some issue. Okay. Okay. Now we have to install certain plugins. So for that, we can go to Manage Jenkins. I'm not sure what this is. Okay. So for that, we can go to plugins, and here we have to install certain plugins. First plugins we are going to search for, which is going to be 𝗏𝘗𝗶𝗴. Okay. As of now, I think it is already present. Let me check. If I go to install plugins, we can go here to, yeah. 𝗏𝘗𝗶𝗴 scanner plugin. I guess in newer version, they are making it present by default. Okay. That's great. So we can install Stage View plugin. After that, we are going to run the command for installation of, we are going to search Maven, and here you need to install this pipeline Maven integration, and we are going to install Maven integration as well. After that, we need to install config file provider. So the reason that we have to install config file provider, because we want to publish our artifacts to Nexus. And for connecting to Nexus from Jenkins, we need to make sure that credentials are available from Jenkins to Nexus. And for Nexus credentials, we are going to store inside a separate file, which is known as settings.xml. So that file will be available when you set up this plugin. Okay. After that, we are going to search for Docker. And here we have to, we'll be able to find some plugin like Docker pipeline. I guess it is also present. First, let me install this. This will take some time. Meanwhile, we can go to install plugins. Here we can search Docker, and you can see this plugin Docker pipeline that is already present. So that's great. Okay. And download progress we can see. So these plugins are getting installed, and this may take some time. So this is done, and now we can go to Manage Jenkins. So whatever plugin you install from there, those plugins will be available to configure inside tool sections. If I show you, if I scroll down to this plugin that was already installed, so we can configure this. I can type here as sonar-scanner. Version you can select based on requirement. Make sure to select Maven, and here I'll provide a name Maven 3 version. I'll just leave it as it is. This one we don't have to configure because we have already installed on our Jenkins machine. Okay. Other than that, here you see this option managed files. This option is present because we have installed config file provider. Okay. Now, first thing that we are going to do is add certain credentials. For that, we can go to credentials, click on global, click on add credentials. Now, there are multiple credentials we have to add. First credential that we have to add is for the GitHub account, so that we can fetch repository from there. So in that case, I can type username, which is going to be this, then password. So for password, what we have to do, we have to go to this profile, click on settings, scroll down to developer settings, and here you need to click on personal access token, click on tokens classic, and you need to generate the token here. You can generate it here. Okay. So once you have that token present, you can go to Jenkins and you have to add it here. So let me check where I kept it. Okay. I'll paste it here, and ID, in ID you can provide any name, get cred. I'll just go with, and I'll add it here as well. Click on create. This is done. Next credential that we have to add, which is going to be for Docker. So for Docker, you need to provide the username and then the password for Docker. Docker registry password. See, because I am going to publish my Docker images to public Docker Hub registry, so I need to provide the password. So I can provide the password here, and in ID you can provide a name also, Docker cred. ID is not mandatory, but the thing is key, if you provide name here, it makes it easier to verify. If I click on create, you can see easily we can understand what kind of password we have created. Okay, these are the IDs that we created. Okay. Now we can go to dashboard and let us start writing the pipeline. Here I'll provide the name as CI, click on pipeline, click on OK. Okay. Now here make sure to check this option, number of days, this keep it empty, and here you can put 2. because to why we have to put it's part of best practice, because when we run multiple pipelines, so there will be in history there will be a lot of pipelines available that is going to occupy a lot of space, which we don't want. So for that purpose we'll make sure that only last two pipelines are visible in the history. Okay, we will scroll down here. Now if you are new in writing pipelines, you can easily take help from first select a template. I created hello world template. Okay, first thing that you have to do, copy the stage. Make sure that you are copying proper brackets. Copy that, create multiple stage now. Okay, 5 stages I have created. Now we are going to modify those stages as per our own requirement. Okay, first stage that we can add, it's going to be git checkout. Basically what we want, the code that we have kept in the the code that we have kept in GitHub repository, we want to use it here in Jenkins. For that, Jenkins need to create a local copy of that code inside Jenkins. That can be done using this first stage, which is git checkout. Now here we need to provide information about the repository, and in case you don't know the format how to write it, you can simply scroll down, click on pipeline syntax. Let me close this, and here you can scroll to git, this one, and here we have to provide the repository URL. So in our case, if I go to here, the repositories, we can go to CI. This is the CI repository. Inside CI repository, what we are having, the actual code for the application. So I can clone this, copy the URL, paste here, check the branch name, which is main in our case, and I can put that as well here. As of now, you can see it's giving error 128, so it means that there is no credential available. So we have to select the credential, in our case this. Okay, as soon as selected, that credential issue are gone. So click on generate. Now this is the script that we can simply write in our pipeline stage first, which is going to be the first stage. Okay, which is the git checkout. After that, what I want, see, the thing is when we talk about DevSecOps, one of the main thing that we can do is like add security concern or security integration at every stage. So this is like first stage. Here what we can do, we can first add the first level of security, which is to check if there are any kind of syntax based errors in our code or not. For that we can write compile. The stage name is compile, and here we have to write sh mvn, which is maven compile, which is going to compile our source code to find out if there is any syntax based errors or not. Now when we are writing pipelines, one thing you need to remember, now here I am using mvn, which is maven. That means a third party application I am using. Two things you should understand very clearly, when you are going to use third party tools within Jenkins, for example maven, or if you are going to use tools like, let's say, trivia or anything else, so if those tools are not directly installed on the machine, in that case you have to define that tool in your pipeline. Okay, for example, let's say I want to use Trivi, but I have installed Trivi directly on the Jenkins virtual machine. Then here I don't have to define Trivi. I can directly use it. But since we have not installed Maven directly on the machine, but through the tool section of Jenkins, that means we have to define Maven. How do we define it? So that we can do using tools block. The format is going to be tools, the curly braces. Inside that we are going to write tool type. Tool Maven is a type of Maven only. But the name that we configured, if I show you, if I go back to Jenkins dashboard, manage Jenkins, here if I go to tool section, scroll down, you can clearly see I have given the name Maven 3. Same name we have to give here in single quotes like this, Maven 3. Now this is like we have defined this tool. So once we have defined this tool, we'll be able to use it in our pipeline. Now this command will work fine. Okay. After that, we are going to run the unit test cases. Okay. Now here, now in case you are thinking why we are adding sh, so basically Jenkins by default does not understand that this command maven compile is a shell command and needs to be treated as such. So we are just enclosing the command inside sh, which is shell, telling Jenkins that it should be treated as shell and it should be this command should be run through shell only. Okay. Now for test, you can write sh mvn test. But wait, the code that I'm using, it has issues in the test cases. Now let's say I have issues in test case, but I want to test my running of the application. So what we can do, we can skip the test cases. For that you can add -t skip test equal to true. This means that we are going to skip the test cases. Okay. Next, once we have done that, next step would be I want to scan the dependencies. What if there is any kind of issues in the dependencies? Dependency means what? If this is the application source code, we have pom.xml file. Now inside pom.xml file, we have so many different dependencies defined. Okay. Now it is possible that some of these dependencies might be outdated, depreciated, or having any kind of vulnerabilities. So those information, how we will be able to find? So for that we can find those information using a tool known as Trivy. Okay. Now, so for like Trivy is a kind of tool for which Jenkins does not have a plugin as of now. So in that case, what we have to do, we have to install Trivy directly on the virtual machine where Jenkins is running. Now, remember one thing, as I told you, whichever tool we install directly on Jenkins, we don't have to define in the pipeline. Okay. So first, let us go on browser, search as Trivy, install Ubuntu. Okay. Click on the first link and scroll down to the specific flavor. This is for Rail or CentOS. We have for Ubuntu, we have this. So I'll copy this, go to Jenkins, and here I'll directly run this. And it is going to install Trivy on the Jenkins machine. And once it is installed, we can directly use it in our pipeline. Okay. Meanwhile, let me save this so that it does not go away. So this name I want to give, I want to scan my file system. So I can write file system scan. Okay. And here we have to write the command. So for that we can use sh again. Inside that we can write Trivy. Then what we want to scan, I want to scan file system, so I'll write fs. Okay. Then let's say Trivy scanning is doing, but I want the report to be generated in a specific format. So I'll mention format. And I want the report to be in table format because that is very user friendly format. There are other formats, but tabular form is like user friendly. So I'll mention I want the report to be generated in table format. Then I want the report to be generated in a separate file. That means I can mention -o means output, and the report should be generated in fs.html. Okay. This command, it says, I want to scan file system. I want the report to be generated in tabular format, and those reports should be exported in a file fs.html, which should be created after running. Okay. And then here I want to mention whatever path I want to scan. For example, whichever, if you want to scan a specific folder, you need to give that path. For now, what I want to do, I want to scan the current folder. So I will just put a dot. That means scan current directory. Okay. So Trivy is done. Next step, what I want to do, I want to add sonar analysis. So I'll mention sonar analysis. Now, when we talk about sonar analysis, you should know a very interesting thing. So basically, in case of sonar analysis, there are two things available. First is SonarQube server. Second is SonarQube scanner. These two are two different tools. The one that we have set up as of now here is this server where the report is going to be generated for us to analyze or developers to analyze. Okay. While the second one, Sonar Scanner, it is the tool that is going to generate the report. Okay. So server we have configured here, right? Now tool we have to install. So tool also we have already installed. If I show you, you can see this section, SonarQube scanner installations. Scroll down, you can see this is the tool. Okay. Now we need to make sure that Jenkins is able to communicate, because Jenkins needs to publish the report to SonarQube server. Correct. So if Jenkins needs to publish to SonarQube server, that means Jenkins need to have access on this server. Correct. So we have to, how we can like configure that. For that, you need to go to first manage Jenkins, go to credentials, click on global, click on add credentials. Then go to SonarQube, go to administration, security, then users. Here you see this section token. So this is going to generate a token which we can use for authentication. How we can do that? Click on this, provide a name, like any name you can choose, and you can click on generate. Now this is the token that will be used for authentication. Now we can go back to Jenkins, new credentials, then kind. Here we can define what kind of credential we want to add. So I can expand this, and we can select secret text because it's a token. Paste the token here, provide an ID like sonar-cred, and then same thing we can put in description, click on create. Okay. Again, we can go back to manage Jenkins system. Now system is the section in Jenkins which is the location where you configure different servers, okay, or like mail configuration. Configuration basically with respect to Jenkins or any third party server you can configure here. If I scroll down, you'll be able to see this option, SonarQube servers. Okay, then here you can click on SonarQube, add SonarQube. Let us provide a name like Sonar. This is the server name. Remember that this is the server name. Okay, then server URL which we can get from here till 9000 we have to copy and paste it here, and make sure to remove the last slash. Then token which we have configured, we can select, click on apply. Now Jenkins has access to SonarQube server. Now the report that is going to be created within Jenkins will be able to published over this server. Okay, and I hope this is very clear to everyone. Server versus scanner. Server is the location where we publish the report, where it can be analyzed in detail, while scanner is the tool that is going to start the start to generate the report, and that will be publishing the report to SonarQube server. Okay, coming back here. Now, as you remember, I told you that whatever tool you configure, a third-party tool, inside tool section, you have to define in your pipeline. So now I want to use SonarQube analysis. I want to perform SonarQube analysis. That means I need to define SonarQube scanner tool, because scanner tool is the tool that is going to perform the scanning. How we can define that? So first you need to go here above. Okay, here we are going to create an environment. ANVIRON. Let me just check the spelling. ARON. I mean, okay. In curly braces. Now we are going to create a variable. Okay. Variable name is going to be scanner underscore home. Okay. Whose value is going to be the name of SonarQube scanner. If I write tool single quotes, the name of the scanner, what was it? Tool section. Scroll down here. The name was Sonar scanner. So I'll copy that. Paste it here. Now, you might be thinking what exactly this refers to. Okay, so this is a small concept you need to understand very clearly. This will take a little bit of time, but it's quite important. Okay, let me explain you. Some of you who are quite experienced in Linux, they might already know, but for those who are new, for that I'll explain you in proper way. Give me 1 second. Yeah. So basically, what happens whenever you work with any tool within Jenkins? Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. So basically what happens, whatever tool you install in Linux, it will be having one file which is the executable file. Okay. For example, let's say I'm installing SonarQube scanner. So there will be one file named like this, sonar-scanner, which is the executable file. That means if I want to start SonarQube scanner, I need to execute this file. I need to run the file like this. This I need to go on the location where this file is present, and I can execute this in this format. Okay, some of you who has watched my monitoring video, you might be have seen that when I set up Prometheus, I execute it by running this Prometheus. Prometheus is also, there will be one executable file. Okay, now whatever executable file of a tool that is present, it presents inside a specific folder which is known as bin folder. Okay, so when I write this here, when I write scanner home, so I'm providing the home directory for that scanner tool. Okay, so once we have a home directory, then inside that home directory we'll be able to find this folder, and inside this we'll be having SonarQube scanner which we can execute. Okay, this will be more clear once I write the SonarQube scanner stage. Let me write it. Okay, so we can go back here. So this we have defined. Now coming back to SonarQube analysis. So first I'll close this. Now, as we know that we need to create the report and publish it to SonarQube server, correct? Now SonarQube server is here. Okay, so what we have to do now, we have to create a block inside SonarQube, inside this stage. Again, if you are, for any kind of complex commands, you can take help from pipeline syntax. If I click on this and expand this option, scroll down, you'll be able to find with SonarQube, something like that. You can see this with SonarQube environment. Click on that, select the credentials, generate, and copy this, paste here. Now, okay. So here basically why only credential is there? Because if you want to access any kind of website, two things we need: website URL and the credential, right? But here only credential is mentioned. Why? Because this block by default assumes that we are going to provide the URL of the server inside the commands, but that is not a good practice. The good practice is that everything should be encrypted. So here what we can do, if you remember previously, if I go to manage Jenkins, in system we have already configured our SonarQube server, correct? Here, that means if I just call this directly in our pipeline, that it will be able to understand that we want to connect to, or we want to publish our report to SonarQube's server, right? So what I can do, I can remove this. Okay. Now this block now means that within the environment that we are telling is the SonarQube server environment, and this is basically referring to URL also, credentials also. Okay, and that is much better option. Okay, now we have to write these stages. And as I told you, key we are going to perform the analysis using scanner, correct? That means we need to execute this scanner. How we can do that? So we are going to use again shell commands as such. Now everywhere you see I'm using double quotes, but it is possible that inside SonarQube stages we can have multiple lines of code, right? So if you are going to write multiple lines of code, instead of using double quotes, you can use triple quotes. Now, how we can execute this? First, we are going to call the variable that we created, which was scanner underscore home, right? Slash. As I told you, the executable file of this tool will be inside bin folder. What is the name of executable file? Sonar dash scanner. Okay, I'll be showing you in a bit this part also. Okay, this. So this is going to basically execute the Sonar scanner tool. Okay, now we have to provide some parameters like the project name inside SonarQube, what kind of project we are having, those kind of information that we can add using -d sonar dot project name and capital equal to, you can whatever you want, you can put, I'll just going to put bank app. Okay, then -d sonar dot project key k capital. This is basically referring to the project key is referring to a unique ID to reference our specific project. Here also I can put a bank app. Okay. Now let's say I have multiple lines of code. I can put slash. I can go, and here you can see I have not closed this bracket. That's what I was meaning when I said that we have to put three quotes if you have multiple lines of code. Okay. Here I can add one last thing, which is going to be D. This should be in capital actually, I think. Yeah. -d sonar. Now, when you are working with a Java-based projects, you need to make sure that you are providing the location of binary files as well. So for that, I can write dsonar.java.binaries file. And here we have to give the location. So generally they are present inside target folder. Okay. And now we can enclose this. We remove extra this. So you can see this is like two lines of code, but this is like single thing. That's why we are using this triple quotes. Okay. So this will perform this on RCube analysis. Okay. Now, till this, let us run this and let us confirm that it's running fine. I can build now and let us see if it has any error, we are going to fix it. Okay. Team, I know this is going a little bit long, but as you see, I'm trying to explain every single thing in detail so that, sorry, let me see if we have anything. Okay. Coming back. See, when you run this for the first time, so whatever tools you have mentioned, like SonarQube, Scanner, Maven, those are going to be getting installed. And you can see it is running the command unpacking. Okay. Meanwhile, I want to show you this as well. If I go on this location, I will go to Jenkins. I'll go here, this ls. You see this folder? This is the home directory. If I go inside this, you can see bin folder. We can go inside that as well. This. Now, this thing that you see, this is the executable file, and how we are, if I want to run SonarQube analysis, we need to execute this file, and that's exactly what I did in case of SonarQube analysis stage. If you go here, first what I did, I went into a home directory, then bin, then Sonar Scanner. This is how we are performing the analysis by calling the or executing the Sonar Scanner tool. Okay. Now let's wait for this. File system scan is done. Okay, so it is done, and we should be able to see the report here. Report is present. We have 8 code smells, and code coverage as of now I have not configured this, but I'll be teaching later on someday how to configure code coverage because it's quite important actually. Okay, so this is working fine. Okay, one more thing that I'll show you, like for Trivi stage, if I show you here, workspace, this is the local workspace. If I go inside it, you can see we have one file fs.html, which is the tabular. One second. Yeah. So this is the tabular format of the report that is generated, okay, for the issues. Now we can go back, and now we have to build the application, generate the artifact, and publish it to Nexus. Okay. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create multiple stages. And let me copy this and go here, create one stage, second, third, 3 stages we have created. Okay. Next stage that I want to add, which is going to be for building the application. Okay, building and publishing. So what I want, I will build this application and publish it to Nexus at the same time. Okay. Now for writing the stages for this, few things we need to understand. Again, see, in case of SonarQube, since we wanted to publish report on SonarQube, and so for that we have to connect SonarQube to Jenkins. Similarly, for if you want to publish artifact to Nexus, we have to connect Nexus to Jenkins. Okay. For that, what we'll be needing URL and credentials. Okay. Before that, I'll go here, go on repositories, and 2 repositories we are going to work with, releases and snapshot. The main difference between them is that releases is the repository where we are going to store or publish the artifact that is going for production, while snapshot will be repositories where we are going to publish the artifact that is for lower environment. Your question might be, how do we differentiate, how do we tell Jenkins to like upload production to here and snap lower environment here? So for that we will be going into CI repository, scroll down to pom.xml. Okay, and here you can see very clearly it's written version is 0.0.1 dash snapshot. That means automatically we are telling ki this artifact that we are going to generate, it is for lower environment. Okay, here if I remove snapshot and we run the publish command, then artifact will be going to releases. Okay, so generally in companies, when they are working for lower environment, they will make sure to mention snapshot so that multiple artifact will be going to snapshot repository only. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, for Jenkins to connect with Nexus, 2 things we need: URL of the repository and the credentials. So URL of the repository we can add in the pom.xml file. There will be one section of distribution management. Again, someone calling, anything else happening? My screen visible, right, guys? Guys? Okay. Okay, coming back. So see, this section we have to add when we want, like this is the section in pom.xml file where we add the URL of Nexus repository. Okay. Now, if this is not present, you have to manually add it. Okay. Now I'll click on edit and we are going to edit this. Scroll down here. So the thing that we need to edit is the URL. URL where we can get, I can go here. This is the this section, repository, click on Maven releases, and here you'll see this option copy that URL will be available to you and you can add it here. Okay, after that we are going to add for snapshot also. So for snapshot, click on this and you can get the URL here as well. I'll just copy this and here. Okay. So both are added, URL is added. Now credential is pending, right? So I'll save this. I'll commit these changes. Go to here. Now, this section you see deployment policy. Sometimes it is possible that we are trying to deploy same artifact to the repository. So it is possible that by default it may be disabled, so that you will be getting error in that case. So make sure to allow redeploy so that you can upload same artifact multiple times without overwriting. Okay. So this part is done. Credential URL is added. Now we have to add credentials. So let me save this. In the beginning, I told you that we installed one plugin. Which plugin? We installed the plugin config file provider, which is going to help us create the file where we can store the credentials. And this section you are seeing managed files is created because of that plugin. So I'll click on that. Now click on add new config. Now is you maybe it is possible that you might be working with Node.js or any other kind of applications. Each of those projects have their own kind of configuration file. In case of Maven or Java, we have Maven settings. In case of Node.js, we have npm rc or somewhere like that. JSON is some case properties file where we have to add the details of database or something. Okay, so these are the kind of files. Okay, here I'm going to go with global Maven settings. Click on that. Make sure to give a proper ID, like I'll give it as Maven dash settings dash DevOps Shack. Okay, click on next. Scroll down and here you'll be able to see this new file created, and inside this we can add the credentials. So two options you have. If you want to make it more secure, you need to click on add here, provide the server ID, which is going to be repository URL, a repository name, and then credentials, username and password. Okay. Second thing, if you are just practicing, you can just add here also. I would suggest if you are practicing doing self practice, try to add here and let's see how it goes. Okay. For now, I'll just go here and I'll add everything here. So first I have to uncomment. So I'll remove this. Add here. This is uncommented. Now we have to provide the ID. ID is same as repository name. So we have the repository names like this. First we have Maven releases. I can copy that name, put it here. Then username, which is going to be admin, then password. Okay, this, and we are going to copy this again and create another section for this, and this is going to be for snapshots. One question many of you might thinking, like how exactly do we utilize this once we how exactly do we utilize the artifact that are created that are stored on Nexus. So basically, when you have Java based application, you want to roll back and you want to use the previous version artifact, you can directly fetch it from here from Nexus and then you can utilize it. Okay, I have actually shown that. Okay, so we have configured the credentials also. Now we can go to manage Jenkins. We can go to our pipeline, this configure, scroll down, and here we have to create a block. Again, we can take help from pipeline syntax, click on that. And here you need to find something with Maven, this one. Okay. So here it's like, see, most of things are already available in template format. So here we can select the Maven 3 that we configured. JDK, since one JDK we installed during the setting of Jenkins, so we don't have to worry about that. Here also nothing, and scroll down to this, and here this is the global Maven settings files that we configured. So select that and simply click on generate. Now this is the block inside which we can write steps for publishing artifact to Nexus. Okay, so here you can see this becomes very much easier. There is plugin also available for Nexus, but it's a little bit complex and you have to worry a lot about that. So here I can simply write as such mvn deploy, and this is just going to deploy the artifact to Nexus. Okay, once this part is done, we are good to go with a Docker stage. Okay, so I can here write Docker build and tag. Now Docker is a kind of command which has the kind of command that Docker has, they need to be executed within a script. So we are going to write here script. We are going to create a script block, and inside that we are going to write our stages. Now we can go back to pipeline syntax again. This time we are going to search something with Docker registry. This one, second option, you can see. Open that. So since I am using public Docker registry, so we don't have to provide any URL for that. Registry URL we don't have to provide. In case you are using a private Docker registry, then you have to provide the URL. Okay. Credentials we have already saved, and generate the block. Once you have this block, just copy that. Okay. Now, there is a little bit twist you need to understand very clearly. Okay. And before that, let me show you the CD repository also. Okay. And this is the CD repository. Here we have two folders, bank app and database. If I go to bank app, so in bank app data, this deployment service YAML, we have this section where we have our Docker image defined. Correct. Now it is possible that we are, since we, if you are like working on certain versions, we are going to change the tag also multiple times. It is possible. Correct. And what I want, that whenever I build any specific version of tag here in my pipeline, that version should be automatically updated here also, so that Argo CD is going to immediately deploy the new changes. Okay. So first thing we are going to do is we are going to add the Docker stage using like parameters, so that we can decide at runtime what kind of parameter we want to work with. Okay. So for parameters, you can go here and let us add a section of parameters. Inside this block, we are going to mention first type of parameter. In our case, it's going to be string. Inside that, first name of parameter, which is going to be, in my case, it's going to be uh, docker underscore tag. Okay. Then a default value we have to provide in case we don't provide any, we don't want to change the Docker version, Docker tag. So it can take a default value. So I can put default value, and its value, what I want it to be latest. Okay. Then a little bit description also you can add like this, description, and its value we want to add like that key, let's say Docker tag. Okay, this is done. Now here we have to add the steps for Docker building the Docker image. Okay, for that I can write sh double quotes Docker build -t for tagging, then your username slash the bank application, sorry, bank app. Then we have to add the Docker tag. We have to add in the format dollar curly braces. Inside that we have to write params dot Docker tag. Okay, let me just confirm I have written correct. Second, params Docker tag. Fine. Okay, so 1 second. We have here, we are building the Docker image, and make sure that the name is correct, Docker underscore tag. Here also it should be Docker tag. After that we have to provide a dot, that means the location of Docker file. So our Docker file is present in the current location itself, so we'll just put a dot. Okay, once we have built our Docker image, what we want to scan the Docker image before we push it to Docker registry. So for that we are going to create another stage of trivia. I can go here, I can add stage of trivia. Here I can write, I want to scan Docker image, right? Docker image scan. Here instead of fs, you need to write image. Format, obviously we want in table format. And here instead of this, we can write image, or any name you can give, an HTML format. And here you need to provide the name of the Docker image. In our case, it is this one. Okay, I will copy that. I will paste it here. Okay. Let me confirm again. Everything is fine. Docker tag. Okay. Okay. Now, after image is scanned, what I want to publish it to Docker Hub repository, and I can add the another next stage, which is going to be for Docker push. Here, I want to publish this image. I can write Docker push. I can remove this, and this is going to be 1 second. This is just going to be just dummy. Okay, we will add it later. Okay, go hi. Okay, and maybe we'll remove it for now because I don't want it to cause any issues. Okay, so these stages we have added. Now we can run this and let's see if it gives any error, or let's see what happens. Okay, now this is CI pipeline is almost completed. Only one thing we need to add more. Okay, 1 second. This will be giving issues. 1 second. So as I told you, the project that I'm using, it has issues with respect to test cases. That means we need to skip the test cases. Okay. If I go here, Maven deploy. So here I need to add skip the test cases. I can write the skip test equal to true. This is going to skip test cases and build everything like run other commands. Build with parameters, and here you can see it is giving us an option to provide a tag for Docker. For now, let's just go with latest, or later on you can change whatever you want. Okay. Click on build and it's going to start. Now we can monitor the logs and let's see if any kind of errors come in log, then we are going to fix it. Okay. Where is it? Yeah. See the team the reason that I'm doing like integrating everything step by step, because in companies also they are going to integrate everything step by step. For GitOps, I can directly show you showcase you like how we can deploy the application directly here, but then you don't understand, you wouldn't be able to understand the complete flow. Okay, CI part is also important because we are building the project, we are building the Docker image there itself. Okay, and so credentials is correct for Docker, it is able to log in. Okay, so it has built Docker image. Okay, and this is to be a scanning of Docker image. Let's wait for this. Meanwhile, on Jenkins side, 1 second, /home/ubuntu. On Jenkins side, if I run Docker images, sorry, sudo Docker images, we can see that our Docker image is built, which is of around 370 MB. Okay. Now it's scanning the Docker image. It will take a little bit of time. But yeah, I guess the artifact has been published to Nexus, that we can verify. We can go here, browse, snapshot. Here we have the jar file present. You can see this, right? 49.9 MB. So jar file is successfully pushed. Okay, and you can see it is uploaded into which repository? It is uploaded into snapshot repository, because you can see here for release repository it's empty. Okay. Yeah, and I guess okay. So Docker push is working fine, and this is fine. Okay. Next stage is what? Next stage we want that the here the Docker image that we have inside bank app folder. Here the Docker image that is mentioned, this should be updated as whatever we are building. Okay, correct. So for now we have to add a specific stage inside our pipeline, whose task is to basically update the repository Docker image. Okay, how we can do that? So let me show you side by side. 1 second. Yeah. So let me explain you what exactly we are going to do. First thing that we have to do, since the CD repository is separate repository, so we need to first provide the credentials. Okay. For providing credentials, again, you can just take help from, if I click on this, configure, I think, yeah, pipeline syntax is there. So here, with credential, with git credential, something like that will be there with credentials. And 1 second. Okay, so here you just have to provide a variable username and variable password. uh, okay, that is a different case. One second, let me check the correct one. Get username and password, yeah. So here you just have to select this, click on generate, and this is the block it's going to generate. And we are going to run all the like get push, get commit, all those commands within this block so that credential is present and access is provided for updating the repository. Okay. Okay. So once we have credential ready, first thing that we are going to do is run the git clone command. Inside local Jenkins workspace, we are cloning the CD repository. After that, first thing we are going inside the repository multi-tier bank app CD. Once we are inside it, just to verify that files and folders are present, we are going to run the ls-l command for bank app folder. Okay. Then we are creating one variable which is basically for uh, the current directory. Okay, which is we are running the pwd command. Pwd is for present working directory, so it's going to fetch the details of the present working directory. For example, if I run here pwd, you can see complete path it's giving me, the absolute path from beginning, from base. Okay, that's what we want to be here. Okay, that's why we are creating a variable. After that, we are going to use a sed command. Sed command is basically used for substitution. If you inside your file, if you want to like substitute specific content, then for that you can use sed command. The way that it works, sed is going to call the that specific editor. Hyphen I means that it's going to edit the file in that place only. It's not going to create new file, update that, and then like reverse. It's going to update, like it's going to whatever file existing, it's going to directly update in that. Okay, this is for substitution. And here we are providing a regular expression. What we are telling key, you need in that in the YAML file, you need to search for this content. You need to search for a place where it is saying image colon Adi Jaiswal bank app colon then dot star means after bank app whatever is there. Okay, and we want to update it with image Adi Jaiswal bank app colon with the new docker tag whichever we provided runtime. Okay, and after that we have to provide the like the path of the file which we want to edit. So this is going to provide current directory, which is the directory of multi-tier bank app. Okay, then inside multi-tier bank app we have, if I show you here, we have this folder bank app folder. Inside bank app folder we have bank app dash ds.yaml. Okay, and that's what written here. After that we can just write a message echo updated YAML file contents, and then we can just verify the contents of the file if the image has been changed or not. Okay, once that is done, then we can go inside uh, this multi-tier bank app CD, the repository. Because if I want to run the command for git commit git so and so, I need to be inside the repository. So we are going to go inside that repository. Okay, after that we can add config username and user email just to make sure so that other people who are seeing the repository, they can know that okay, who has updated. Okay, for example, here I can add my email like office at the rate devopsshack.com. Okay, and username I can mention DevOps Shack. Okay, after that we are just going to run the basic command. See, each line you can see it's separate. That's why every time I have to run git command, I need to go inside this repository, because each section it's denoting separate. Okay, so I'll go inside it, I'll run the ls command just to make sure that everything is fine, just to view the contents, then add the exact file that I have committed, then run the git commit, and here message also I have like made it in this format. Then run the git push origin main command, which is going to push the files, push the new changes. Okay, now let me just confirm number of brackets, 1 2 3 4, and I can okay. Yes, I can copy this and I can add it here. Do not worry, this will be available to you guys as well. Okay, I can go here. Okay, and make sure that there is no error. Rest everything, make sure that this image names this that correctly they are updating. Okay, So as of now, it's a v1. Tag is v1, and we are going to run this, and let's see if it works fine or not. Okay. So I can go here, click on build with parameter. Here we can, let's say I want to change it to v3. Okay. Click on build now, and here we can track the progress if there is any kind of error or not. Again, I'm saying this is little long, but this is what happens when you do everything from scratch. Okay. See, again, to be very frank, team, I was seeing on YouTube also people are teaching SonarCube and everything, but people are not exactly telling. See, I have not used the code coverage in detail, but code coverage is quite important because SonarCube is basically used to do two tasks. First task is basically SonarCube does, which is to help you find out code related issues, which is code quality check. It's going to help you find out if there is like, give me one second. It's going to help you find out if there are any bugs, if there are any vulnerabilities, if there are any other kind of issues in your source code. First thing. Second thing, since you have test cases in your source code, so when we run when let's say I have 100 lines of code and I run 10 test cases. In that, basically, what we have to do, why we are running test cases, so that we can test it if our 100 lines of code is correct or not, if that is tested or not. So basically, let's say I ran 10 test cases and that is able to test 90 lines of code, not 100. Then we say that code coverage is 90%. If we are running 10 test cases to test 100 like complete course source code, but it is able to test only let's say 80% of the code, then we say 80% is the code coverage. Okay. And generally in companies it is preferred to have minimum 80% of code coverage. Okay. And yeah, on LinkedIn also I see lots of people are posting, but nobody is exactly showing how to get that code coverage in all kind of project. Okay. But I'll be showing later on. Okay. So here we can see that it is pipeline is successful. We can verify here. Okay. And we can go to repository. We can refresh the page. And here you can see now the version is changed to v3. That means it is working fine. Okay. Now coming to, now we can go to CD part. Okay. So now we can go to Argo CD. I'll refresh the page. Okay. First thing that you have to do is, as I said, in Argo CD, we don't have to provide any kind of specific credential. We just need to make sure that our Argo CD is connected to the CD repository where we have the configuration files for the application. Okay. So now you can go to Argo CD, go to settings, go to repositories, click on connect repo. You can select whichever you want. I usually go with HTTPS. Here, type will be Git project. By default, one project is available, which is by default. You can create another project also, but that is up to you. Then repository URL. So we want to connect to this repository, correct? I'll copy that. I'll paste it here. Username, which is going to be our username. Then password. In place of password, we have to add the token. Okay. Token, where is it? I think I kept it somewhere like this. Okay. So I'll copy that token. I'll paste it here. Okay. And I will click on connect. Now, as soon as you receive this status successful, that means Argo CD is able to access your repository. Okay. Now, we can click on applications, click on new app, and now from here we can create. But you can see there are tons of options. We are going to understand that. Okay. First, application name. This is whatever you want. You can give. Make sure that you are writing it in small letters only. So I'll go to write bank app. Project name. This is default. One project is available. This project is basically inside Argo CD. Okay. So if you want, you can create separately also, whichever you want, but one project is available by default. You can go with it. Sync policy. I want that automatically from my repo, Argo CD should be able to fetch the latest version of details, latest version of tag and deploy that. Okay. So for that, automatic, but there is a catch there, which I'll show you in a bit. Then we have self-heal. So, basically the way that Argo CD is going to work, every time or continuously, it's going to see, this is the repository and this is the YAML manifest files. Okay. And here we have written our desired state, like two pods we want. This one I'll explain in a bit. This is very important actually. So two pods we have want, and these are the other information. So this is my desired state. Okay. So the way that Argo CD is going to work, every time it's going to check the repository, check the files, and check that the application that are created like inside Kubernetes cluster, are they matching the desired state or not? If they are not matching, it's going to check, get the desired state and like apply that. Okay, this is how it's going to work. Okay, sync policy, make sure you are keeping it automatic. Self is like, if at any point inside the cluster, let's say key desired state is not equal to current state. So for that, if you want Argo CD to take action, we can use this. Then we have this option. I'll explain a few more options, which is quite important. Auto create. So let's say I want to deploy my application to specific namespace, but that namespace inside EKS cluster is not present. So we can just provide the name and Argo CD will be able to create it. How Argo CD will be able to create that? Because when we are setting up Argo CD, you might have seen, if I show you here, there were so many role binding was done, cluster role. That means Argo CD was given access to create namespaces as well. Okay. Now we have prune resources. So basically, see, what it's going to do, Argo CD, it's going to, as I say, it's continuously going to check Git. So if any resource where it's updating and deploying, if it sees that that resource is not at all present, that configuration is not at all present in Git, it's simply going to prune it, means delete it from here itself. Okay. Deletion financializer. So once again, yeah, so in short, if I try to explain you deletion financializer, so whenever before it's going to delete something, it's going to clean up properly before it's going to delete the resource. Okay, but yeah, this is not something that you need to focus right now. One more thing, skip schema validation. Okay, so basically what happens, as of now I'm creating some resources that are already known by Kubernetes, like kind is deployment. But in Kubernetes we have some options to create custom resources also, where kind we can decide, we can write custom resource like that. So those are like by default not present in Kubernetes, but we are creating them custom. Those are custom resource type. So in that case, what we do, skip schema validation. That means Argo CD is not going to verify that this is like present or not, this is known by Kubernetes or not. So in case of custom resource definition, if you want to create any custom resource, make sure to check this. Okay. Then there are other options, but they are as of now not so important. Okay. Now here we have to select the repository where we from where exactly we have kept our YAML manifest files. So you can just expand it and you'll be able to get the repository details. Okay. Revision, here you need to provide the branch name where you have kept the file. Path. Now in our case, you can see clearly that we have two folders correctly. So we need to provide path, right? So either you can write the path for one folder, then you have to create another application. But what I suggest, you just put a dot. Okay. After that, make sure after putting dot, go to this section directly, click on this directory recurse. Basically, what it means that as we put just dot, that means Argo CD will go to current folder. This is currently here it will go, then it's going to go inside other folders also, and there it will be able to find the files, and then it will be able to deploy without any issues. So this will for that I have just put a dot. Okay. And that directory recurse, we have to enable it so that Argo CD by itself, it can go inside all the folders and find the YAML manifest files. After that, make sure here we are adding the cluster. So as of now, we are just connected to one cluster. So we can add it here. Namespace. Now namespace, let's say I want to deploy my application to XYZ namespace, which is not at all created, but I want Argo CD to create it. Okay. Rest and no changes. We have to do anything else, and we can click on create, and let's wait for this. Okay. So here you can see it is created. Okay. And let me make it smaller. Okay. So it's created, and if I want to access my application, okay, first let us understand what components has been created. First, we have the application that we have created inside inside our Argo CD. Okay. After that, what we are having service, which is bank app service, the actual service using which we can access the application. Then we have MySQL database service, okay, which is of cluster IP type. This is of load balancer IP type. Then we have bank app deployment, two deployment, one for bank app, one for MySQL. In MySQL, we are having one pod. This is the replica set. And for bank app, we are having one replica set, but two pods, which is defined. Okay. Now, if I click on this, we can get the URL to access our application, which will take little bit of time to completely come in running state. I can go here. This will take some time. Okay. Meanwhile, we can go back here. Now, these two sections you might not be aware completely about this. EP, EP and endpoint slice. So basically, EP is the component where we get information about this service is connecting to which pods. So EP is basically endpoints, which is used to store IP addresses of the pod to which the service is going to connect. Okay. Then we have endpoint slice. So basically this component endpoint slice, it got introduced later on because let's say we have a very big project where we have so many different pods. In that case, for this EP, it was not very easy or possible to store all the IP addresses for different pods. So we used endpoint slice. Okay, these are not so important as of now, but just knowledge purpose I'm telling that you should be knowing. Okay, they store information about to which IP address the service is connecting. Okay, now let's say, let me, okay, sorry, HTTPS not. Okay, application, you can see it's running fine. We can register and work with it. Okay, now, yeah, as of now, it's running on HTTP, but actually in course I have actually, when I was making making one of the videos on course, so I was actually researching a little bit on Ingress, and on YouTube also I saw a lot of people have made Ingress videos, but nobody properly shown how you can create Ingress, integrate custom domain with Ingress, and then like on your URL how you can add SSL certificates inside EKS cluster also. I have done that. Okay, I'll be adding it again. Okay, so our application is running now, right? But still, let us do a little bit of automation because this part also I never know. I saw nobody was using this. Okay, so as of now, let's say if I go to bank app and let's say I deploy or I did some changes like let's say replicas. I want just one pod. I make the changes here, commit changes here. Okay, these changes will be applied, and if I try to go here, we have already enabled automatic sync. Okay, so it's immediately it fetch the details, but sometimes what happens, this may not work. If it is not working, in that case what we have to do, you simply have to create a webhook. So I'll copy the Argo CD URL. I'll go back to GitHub repository, go to settings, go to webhooks. Let me delete the previous webhook. MFA is enabled on my phone, on my account. 1 second, give me 1 second. So I can click on add webhook, provide the URL. Make sure you can see here is HTTPS URL because by default it's running on HTTPS only, but saying not secure. So we are adding HTTPS URL. Here we'll select JSON secret. You don't have to put. Make sure to, if you are using HTTP, then make sure to disable the SSL verification. Okay. Click on add webhook. And here we should be able to see the status, recent deliveries. You can see it works fine. Okay, so in case the automatic refresh is not working, make sure to add the webhook, and then it will work fine. Okay, now let us test these changes properly. Okay, so what I want now, I want to create new Docker image with different versions. So now I want to create the image which version, let's say 4, and I'll build it. I'll click on run, and now let's see what happens because it's immediately going to update the CD repository, and that in turn should be fetched by Argo CD to deploy the changes here with the new Docker image. Okay, so let's wait for this to complete. See, in GitOps, this is proper real-time automation that we do. Okay, this webhook is see, as of now it may not always require, but sometimes it works. It happens that this may not work, this automation may not work properly, and you have to click every time refresh button for the changes to be applied. So if you don't want to do that, make sure that you are adding the webhook from Argo CD. Okay, we have some error. Okay, the issue that we face now, you can see that it says it's already existing, the repository, it's already existing. So what we can do in order to avoid this scenario is that before we run the pipeline, the first thing that we should be doing is clearing the previous workspace. Because if I show you, this is, if I go here, workspace, you can see that previously when we the local workspace created, this repository is already present, right? So if I want to clone it every time to make changes and push changes, so what I can do, I can basically clear the local workspace before we start the pipeline. Okay, for that also we can add one small stage, uh, this one, clean workspace. Very simple command, clean capital WS in bracket, and this will clear the workspace before you run the pipeline. Okay, so let us click on configure. We can add it in the first stage. Okay, click on apply, and let us run this again, this time v4. Click on build now, and let's see what happens. See here, it removed the complete previous pipeline workspace, so that now freshly we can start. Okay, and now let's see what happens. See, there are so many different scenarios that will be coming, but again, once you practice like properly, then you only you'll be able to understand how like what kind of issues you are facing and how you can fix it. When I was writing this pipeline, multiple issues were coming, but one by one I used to fix it. Okay, but yeah, do not worry, I'll be sharing you with the pipeline as well, so you can also, you can see we are uploading jar file also. So at this point we have uploaded multiple same jar, right? We have not renamed the jar files. So if I go to snapshot, you can see there are multiple jars. If I expand it, only version has been changed. Their jar file is same, but versions has been changed 1-2 like that. Okay, so that is also fine. We can go at the end, and it's creating the new Docker image version 4. Okay, now you can see it worked fine, and we can verify by going here, bank app here, and we have version 4, and this should be, 1 second, fresh here just to verify, and go to pod. Okay, now it's able to update. Okay. Okay, one more thing I'll tell you, this section, now you can see this previous replica set is available, it's not deleted. This is the new pod, but previous replica set is not deleted. So the reason that it is present, because in our project we have added this section, revision history limit 1. This means that whenever new version of a pod is created, it's going to not delete the last one version of replica set will be there. Why we are keeping it? So that if needed for us to roll back, we can easily roll back to that version. Okay, okay, and yeah, so this is how you can implement properly, and this is how like you can utilize GitOps. Okay, and one more time, let us make some changes just to verify. I'll just add 2 here, commit the changes. We can go to here. Okay, I think it's not able to pick up properly. We have to, okay, no problem. So now I'll be taking questions, guys, and whatever questions you are having, we can take it with respect to this implementation also. Plus, whatever, if anyone having any kind of questions with respect to course, whoever want to enroll, you can just ask whatever queries you are having. Okay, and please, one by one, you can go. Yes, guys, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Bhavan. How to integrate the multiple EKS cluster to one Argo CD?
Yeah, that also we can do. Actually, I'll be making a detailed video on that, but we can do multiple clusters we can add. See, there was one location where we can, if I show you, if I go here, you can see this section. Okay, 1 second, my screen might not be visible. 1 second. Yeah. So in Argo CD, if you go to settings, there will be one section of clusters where as of now we have just added one, but here we can add more clusters also. And adding clusters can be done in two ways, or adding any kind of thing, it can be done in two ways. One is like from UI you can do, from like CLI also you can do. CLI I have not covered here, but I'll be covering it later on.
And second question is that we created the, as of now in this demo, we created the public cluster. But if it, even though if it is a private EKS cluster, it is not connect to internet. So is
Sorry.
it in that case? We create the EKS cluster public, right, in this
Mhm,
demo.
mhm,
But if the
mhm,
EKS cluster is private, it is not exposed to internet. How can
mhm.
we manage it that situation?
See, in that scenario, again, we are not connecting to EKS cluster from outside. You can see that Argo CD is already running inside the cluster, correct? So if Argo CD
Mhm.
is already running inside cluster, then only access that Argo CD requires is the access to the repository. It is already having access to EKS cluster, so we don't have to worry about that. Even if the cluster is private and not publicly accessible, still Argo CD is already in the inside EKS cluster. We don't have to worry about like EKS cluster, because Argo CD is the one who is going to deploy the project inside EKS cluster, and it is already having the access.
Got it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, guys. Another. Go ahead.
Hi, hi Aditya. Can you please share the details about the course and the course contents?
Yeah. So one second. I'll show you one. One second. I'll show you and share my screen. I'll share you some details. First of all, it's starting from coming second of November, and the main point that we are going to focus on is basically getting as much hands-on knowledge as much we can. Because see, for me it's like since beginning itself I have been working in DevOps, and whatever I have learned I try to teach that. So live sessions will be on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and I'll try to take one a doubt session in between weekdays at the evening. Plus on weekdays you'll be receiving pre-recorded videos. Okay, so that in this way you'll be able to utilize complete 7 days. And talking about modules, so module details I think you already having, but let's talk about. See, one thing that I have added some new things also. Service mesh istio I have added new. Helm chart I'll be adding new. Argo CD in detail we are going to add. Plus talking about the project, yeah, Kubernetes first. So in hands-on part, first off we are going to understand the detailed architecture, all the resources present inside Kubernetes, Kubernetes networking, how communication happens properly, pod to service, then external, what kind of commission, however it happens. Then service mesh implementation, RBAC and highly available cluster setup in detail. Then local local Kubernetes setup, and local Kubernetes setup also we are going to do using container D, because Docker is depreciated in newer versions. And EKS setup we are going to do on AWS, and AKS also we are going to set up and deploy applications on that. Plus ingress. Ingress is quite important, and SS certificate. So we are going to deploy application, make it accessible using ingress and via the custom domain. And then we are going to add the SSL certificates so that our application is accessible on HTTPS URL, that also custom. Okay, taints and toleration. Auto scaling also demo I'll be showing you how you can like perform auto scaling, horizontal, vertical, how we can do rollback. Helm chart, complete detail guide, plus along with the setup and project. Then Argo CD project, then multiple projects that will be deploying to different clusters like AKS, EKS, then like self-hosted cluster also. Azure DevOps also I have added. In Azure DevOps also we are going to mainly focus on creating CI/CD pipelines, working with different kind of resources in Azure DevOps. Yeah, talking about this project. So on monitoring side, what we are going to do, we are going to work with Prometheus, Node Exporter, Black Box Exporter, Alert Manager, Grafana. Two kind of implementation we are going to do. First, we are going to do it on local setup. That is like we can pick up virtual machine, set up there, implement, so that we can understand the flow. Once we understand the flow, we are going to set up all these tools on Kubernetes. And on Kubernetes, two kind of monitoring we are going to do. First, we are going to monitor the worker node inside Kubernetes. Then we are going to monitor the application deployed inside Kubernetes. Okay. And yeah, this time I'm adding Python for DevOps also. Actually, I'm making the video, it will be added. And I'll see one thing that I have given to all the batches also, like after course has completed, so whenever you are going for like interviews, I'll be connecting you. If you are going to transition, I'll be helping you understanding project, what kind of info, like day-to-day activities you can explain, how to explain projects, all those things will be there. Okay, talking about hands-on project. So firstly, we are going to focus on multi-tier project where I want to cover all the kind of database like MySQL database with Node.js, .NET project with MongoDB database, Python project with Postgres database, Java project with MySQL database. This will be multi-tier where we are basically connecting to database. This will be helping us to understand how we can connect, like deploy applications with different database, and how we are connecting also over Kubernetes. Then there will be microservice application. There will be some full stack projects in Java and like Python and .NET also full stack without database, or database that is like internal. Then we are going to have some basic website about portfolio website and virtual web browser project. Then the project explained above, like the for monitoring. Then Terraform and Ansible corporate projects. So Terraform and Ansible, we are going to have some normal projects. We are going to create different resources, manage them. Plus there will be one project which is something that I used to work in my previous company. So I wanted to show that project by implementation, so that you can, if you are going for interviews, you can mention ki this is how we use Terraform and Ansible. Then service mesh with Istio. Okay.
So when are you starting this batch?
2nd of November.
Okay, what is the batch numbers? Is it 8 or 7?
7.
Okay.
Hi Aditya, I had a
Yeah,
question regarding Argo CD, Bhavya this
yeah,
side.
yeah.
How about disaster recovery? Like, what if the cluster goes down, and like, how will the Argo CD setup be still in place? Is it written somewhere in GitHub from which it can be deployed again?
See, when we are setting up this cluster, so as of now I set up manually. Okay. But if you are setting up using infrastructure using IAC, then it can be, even if it goes down, we should be having some backup which we can deploy immediately. Generally this is what happens.
All right. Yeah, by the way, the video was very informative and very different, a very practical approach.
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to enroll in the batch. So, will it be done via the website?
Yes, you can just go to devopshack.com. There you'll be able to find, you can click on latest courses and there you'll be able to find. Yes, any other questions, guys? If you are having, you can ask.
Yes, Aditya, hi. So I have a question. Let's say you have implemented Trivi for the vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
So in
Hello.
case we find any vulnerabilities there, who is going to fix those vulnerabilities? And sonar gates, do we have anything which will stop the pipeline to run?
Yes, I have not added quality yet. 1 second. I think Krishna Rao asked something. 1 second. I think he pinged about the declarative or scripted pipeline. So the pipeline that I wrote is declarative pipeline. Scripted I'm not using because older people are like older projects, or like it's long gone. Scripted is like long gone at this point. If you are working with Jenkins everywhere, they are using declarative only. Okay. Your question for Sonarcube, if you are asking like, is there any way to like stop the pipeline if quality gate fails, right? For that, we can add quality gate check. That stage I have not added as of now, but we can add it. And there, 1 second. 1 second, let me share my screen. I'll explain you in a bit. Let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay. See, so here we have this section quality gates. And if I create new quality gate, let's say something. So here we can define threshold, like how much code coverage should be. If code coverage is less than 80%, quality gate check should be failing. If we have duplicated lines, whatever like condition is required, we can set it up here. Okay. In our pipeline, we can add one more stage, which is going to be for quality gate check. Let me show you. Where is it? One second. Here I can show you with quality gate check. Wait for quality gate. So here, first of all, you can see here, wait for quality gate abort pipeline. Okay, so if quality gate check fails and you want to abort pipeline, like basically stop the pipeline, then you can make it true. So if quality gate check fails, then your pipeline will be stopped.